Thank you. Good evening, Miatta.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for your time in being part of our In Conversation series with the 1987. I am really delighted to have this conversation with you and just to share your journey, how you've come into politics and everything in between. And I'm so excited that you've taken your time out of your busy schedule to speak to us.
Pleasure.
I would want to first of all ask you, who is Miatta Fahnbulleh?
Oh gosh,
I always start with
deep and profound.
Who is Miatta Fahnbulleh?
So if I had to choose three words, so I'm a first generation immigrant. That matters because that colours my, views of politics and the journey I've been on that's led me here. I'm an economist, and I'm a campaigner. So something about each of those. So my family came here from West Africa, Sierra Leone, Liberia, settled here. We had to flee, we had to leave and seek asylum here.
Mm-hmm.
And it meant that I've grown up in a community that, is my home from home, but you see a different lens to the struggles that people feel. And the thing that led me to become an economist, I think, was seeing how, the economy just doesn't work for parts of our community. And I was really clear that if I could do things to try to affect that and to sort of change the rules of the game in some way, that's what I should do. So I trained up to become an economist. I've been an economist for the last, I trained up and then I've worked in economic policy for the last 15 years. And the thing that has always underpinned the approach I've taken is, how do we make the economy work for people? Because it's not at the moment working for everyone. And what does that look like in terms of the kinds of reforms that we should try to drive? And I went from being just a policy person to thinking, actually, we need people who can campaign to make our politics listen to that. Yeah. So I have been campaigning in order to get politics to respond to the kinds of ideas that I think can fundamentally change the way our economy works. So what's better for people, what's better for the community that I grew up in.
Fantastic. I think to have that sort of grounding speaks a lot about you as a person, speaks a lot about your journey as well, and that you've shared, how you're a migrant, flee a war-torn country, came into the UK, settled, and now you are the MP for Camberwell and Peckham. But not only an MP, you're also Minister for Consumer Energy. Yes. So I think that is quite profound. This is your first time being elected as a member of Parliament for the Labour Party. What does that feel like? And if you could probably tie it in with sort of the theme for International Women's Day, which is Accelerate Action. Yeah. What does that mean for you, and how does that all add up?
Yeah. So look, the feeling is overwhelmingly one of privilege. So Peckham is, I know every MP says that about their constituency, but Peckham is an incredible community and just very special, and personally special to me because, we've got a big Sierra Leonean community there, and growing up, if you're a Sierra Leonean in London, Peckham is your home from home, right?
Yes, exactly.
So
everything there.
To have the chance to represent a community that means so much to me is a huge, huge privilege. And, we've got big challenges, but there is so much richness and solidarity and resilience and power in our community. And that feels very, very special. So, you feel a big weight of responsibility. And I remember one of the things that will always massively touch me was, when I was campaigning, you go and you'd meet people in the community and people would say, our sister, our daughter is going to represent us. Yeah. And that comes with it huge pride, a genuine sense of privilege, but a massive sense of responsibility. So that's a big enough job. And then I had the double privilege of being asked to be a minister on an agenda that I'm so passionate about. passionate about climate change and net zero, but actually my job is bread and butter stuff. You know, there's a big cost of living crisis. I see it in my community all the time. You know, people are under huge amounts of pressure, and energy is at the heart of that. And, you know, my job is to try and think about the ways in which we can ease that pressure. How do we get those energy bills down? How do we upgrade people's homes so they have homes that are warmer, cheaper to run? Bread and butter issue. So the chance to do that, the chance to have, you know, the levers of power to do things that can make that better for people, is again a massive, massive privilege. It weighs heavy because it matters. Getting it right really, really matters. But, you know, rarely do you have the chance where you're actually in a position to do that, which takes me to sort of International Women's Day. And I think the thing I'd say is, the three things I try to do is be a role model for all my community, but particularly for the women in my community, and actually across the country, but, you know, the women in Peckham, and the women of colour in Peckham. You know, and I think it's really important for them to see someone that looks like them.
Speaking on the behalf.
Yeah, but also taking the steps that they can take. And I'm like, I got here.
Yeah. You
can get here. And I think that's really important. We need, you know, female leaders that people can look up to and say, they did it, I can do it. But just being a role model is not enough. You know, it is all in our action. It's in how we empower others. So that, you know, my thing is when you go through a journey, it's your responsibility to make sure that you're creating the space and opportunities for others to go into that journey, and using the privilege and the power that you've got once you're here to open up that space for others, and then making sure that you are a voice for the issues that matter, that, you know, people who are, you know, they have a voice, but it's not always listened by the people that it needs to listen to. So if you can amplify, and, you know, there are huge issues that women in the country, in society are facing, whether that is misogyny, whether that is violence against women, things that you would hope had been dealt with and they still haven't. And I think we all have a responsibility in positions of leadership to make sure we're amplifying those voices.
Thank you. That's very profound. And obviously you speak so passionately about the community you represent and the community that voted for you as an MP. Now, if we are looking forward, now that you are an MP, in terms of gender equality, pay rise, and sort of you mentioned the bread and butter issues, you know, in terms of, obviously there's a cost of living crisis, it impacts across the board, across the whole of the UK, across the whole of the world. What are your priorities in terms of addressing that for not only your local community, but actually the whole of the UK? What are your, you know, how do you see that being achieved and being done? And what are the quick wins that we could do to make that happen?
So, you know, it was interesting when I was sort of thinking about what my priorities for Peckham were. I spoke to a lot of people. And what I found interesting is, like, coming into this job, I'm speaking to a lot of people and it's the same set of issues. And, you know, and if I had to pick three things that I think for me are the litmus tests about how successful we will be as a Labour government, and the thing that we absolutely have to get right, I think the first is, it is about money in people's pockets. And there are two sides of that. We've got to make work pay, because there are too many people that are going to work, they're busting a gut, and it does not pay enough in order to raise a family. And I think that is absolutely unforgivable. And one of the reasons I'm so proud of the fact that we're getting that Employment's Right bill through is that it's a core part of that. Getting people out of precarious work, making sure that people have the bargaining power, the rights that means that they can push up wages, as well as increasing the minimum wage. So, like, that is a massive deal. And it's not just important for people on the minimum wage, for example, but it filters through the income scale. So that bit around, we've got to put more money in people's work pockets, we've got to make work pay, is absolutely critical. But you've also then got to deal with the cost of everyday essentials. Now, I have the ability to do something on energy, and, you know, whether it's energy bills, and I'll come on to housing in a second, you've got to bear down on the cost of essentials, so that as more money goes into people's pockets, it's not being filtered out by a high cost. So that's the first thing. And that will get to the question of, do people feel better off? And we will be judged on that question. And so we have to get the interventions to get that right. The second for me is on housing. I think the idea that the security of a home that you can afford is not something that is an earned right as a citizen is an absolute travesty. And, you know, I feel it acutely in Peckham. I think all London MPs, but people across the country. How have we got to the stage now that people are completely priced out of the housing market? The rental market is massively insecure. So getting to the heart of the housing crisis, which is about security in the rental market, yes. It is about more homes, but my goodness, it's about more social housing.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's good to see the team is running at that, but for me, progress on that, because housing has been a disaster for a very long time. We had 15 years where not enough was done, and we've got to turn that around. And then for me, the final bit is, you know, my politics is rooted in public services and foundational things. The thing that the state does is that it provides that foundational set of things that means that anyone can thrive. That means that when you're unwell, the NHS is there to catch you. And the other lot, completely, you know, ground down the NHS. It is now our jobs to pick it up, because health and the ability to be healthy and know that the state is there to capture you when you're not is absolutely critical. But it's core things like health, education, and feeling safe in your community. And we've got to start repairing all of that has been broken down over years and years and years under the Tories. And for me, if you can get those three things right, money in your pocket, a roof over your head that is affordable and secure, and the core foundational bread and butter services that means that whether you're poor or rich, you've got that foundation that you can spring up from. We start to rebuild the country and the social settlement that will get to the root of the reason I'm in politics, an economy that works for people.
Thank you. That really it's quite a solid sort of overview in terms of, as an economist yourself, how you see things working and how it should work. Because let's not forget, we've had 14 plus years of the Tories.
Don't get me started.
Don't get me started either. We cannot stress it enough, and we really should, you know, because maybe first 2-3 years, for example.
Yeah, look, I completely agree with you. So it's funny, I get to do the media round as a minister, and, you know, people love sort of throwing at you the barrage of things that are broken. And I always say, it's been 8 months.
Yes.
And quite frankly, on any measure, when you look, I've got a little list of all the things that we have done as a government in that time. And if you look at the prolific rate at which we are doing the things that will drive change, and it's only been 8 months. So I completely agree on that point. People are impatient for change, and I understand it. Life is tough. We have had 15 years of the sort of failure that we haven't seen, certainly not in my lifetime, but in generations. And it's not just the acute failure of government and the fact that they just broke a load of stuff, but it was at the same time as living standards stagnated for 15 years. Now, we have not had that in modern history, where living standards have not budged. So people were poorer on the day of the election than they were when the other lot came into power. And so it's that combination that life is tough and people want change. You know, we won that election on a mandate of change. So I understand the impatience. And so I think it does put an onus on us that we have to show that change is coming. And that means, so you take the question of housing, you know, for me, the three things, and I would say, you know, I'm lucky enough to be the MP where Southwark is our council. We are, and the council love to say this, but, you know, they are the biggest, council house builder in the country, but they say Europe. I'm not sure about that, but they say Europe, but certainly in the country.
Let's say Europe, actually.
Where there's been a really ambitious programme of the council building social housing. And I think the three things, so if I think about my patch, I think applies across the country, we absolutely need to get bricks and mortar so people can see building is happening. And there are things that we need to deal with in terms of planning. There are big questions about investment and investing in housing, and the partnerships that you need to put in place with the private sector in order to unlock the house. But people need to see that we are building is the first thing. I think the second thing is, you know, we've got a lot of stock that is in a really terrible state. I was in one of our estates in the Aylesbury, biggest estate in Europe. And the state of some of our housing stock the conditions that people are living in. You know, they were showing me pictures of like walls that are crumbling down, pipes that are burst, rat and mice infestation. And I'm like, in the 6th richest country in the world, it is unforgivable that this is the situation that we're in. And so I think there is a big bit of work, which is our existing stock. What are we doing to upgrade it? Now, in part, that speaks to my agenda. So the part of the reason that, you know, our warm homes plan is about upgrading those homes. And if we're going in to make them more efficient so they're cheaper, we should at the same time be thinking about how we maintain them, how we upgrade them so it works for the communities. And we've got amazing examples where, both in my patch, but actually I was up in Liverpool, and I went to an estate and they'd had a kind of a big full block estate upgrade. And I was talking to some of the community and they were like, it's amazing, our energy bills have come down. One of the guys took me into his flat, he's like, feel this wall, it used to be freezing cold, feel how warm it is. And they're like, but the most amazing part is, it wasn't just about the things that were done to make my home feel warmer and to reduce my bills, but the whole estate has been made up.
Wow.
This used to be an eyesore. People would drive down the highway and they would look and people would like turn their nose up at our estate, but we are proud. And I'm like, that's the opportunity, and it's tangible, it can be done quickly. And so it means that, yes, we are building the homes, but the homes that we do have, my goodness, let's make them fit for people. And in the process of doing that upgrades and repair, what, you know, the examples where we've done regeneration in the community, often what the council is doing is regenerating the properties that you have, but then building additional. So, you know, more flats on tops or new blocks or redesigning that community so that we are infilling and getting housing. So there is stuff that we can do, but people need to see it. Like in the end, whether it's, you know, my community in Peckham or people across the country, words are cheap now because they've had 15 years of words and broken promises. It is all about action. People have to see and feel it in their communities. And so that is the onus on us as a government. I certainly wear that very heavily as a minister with great responsibility. And we just have to deliver.
I think that you're so right in terms of the current state of play with regards to a lot of the social housing. A lot of them, you know, it speaks for itself. It doesn't, you know, even if the tenants don't tell you, you just literally need to walk in and go into some of them and you'd be really shocked. And as you've mentioned, it's not fit for purpose at all. And we could clearly understand why people will feel that way and that pinch and everything like that. Now, in terms of engaging your residents, okay, you've had, I would say, very big shoes to fill, as in Harriet Harman, right?
That was my campaign slogan. I knocked on people's door, they're like, big shoes to fill. I was like, Miatta Fahnbulleh running for Peckham, big shoes to fill.
You had really big, very big shoes to fill. You know, she had been the MP for that area for quite a long time, 42 years. And now to see or to have a new MP as in yourself, but also I think that I think times have changed quite significantly. You know,
is an icon.
She is. Yeah, of course she is. She is an icon. And, you know, having been the mother of the house previously and held that seat quite securely. So do you think, I'm sure you just mentioned when you went and they were asking you, you know, Miatta Fahnbulleh, big shoes to fill. How do you think, you don't, you know, I think there's something where we think, we have to fill those shoes, but actually it's how do we complement and build up on and maintain 100%. What they've already had for that length of time? How do you think you'll be able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, look, brilliant question. And I feel incredibly lucky because I think she has bequeathed me a legacy for the Labour Party that is incredibly special. So the level of regard, you know, you go in the community, you knock on doors, everyone has a story about how Harriet touched their lives in some sort of way. And I think that is incredibly special to do as an MP. I think there is there's a handful of MPs that do that well. And so for me, that's a huge opportunity that, you know, because of a lot of the work she did, the Labour brand is very strong. And so for me, it's about building on that trajectory. The thing I am trying to learn, because if you take over from someone like Harriet, you're mad not to learn from her. And I think the thing that she did really well and the thing that I'm trying to replicate is she had a huge national presence, changed our politics nationally, big national voice, whether it was, the Equalities Act or the minimum wage, can point to things that defined our politics and policy and change things. But she was always rooted locally. And, the stories that you hear of how she worked for her constituents speak to that. And so for me, that's the model. Have impact nationally that will fundamentally have a bearing on your community, but not at the expense of being the champion and fighting for your community. So that's the model I'm trying to put in place. And, what we're trying to do is, use new and different ways in which we can engage the community. So whether, that is through kind of social media and digital reach, but, simple things like, we're trying to partner with TRAs at the moment and just go in, meet people where they are. Yes, we can hold surgeries, but actually I'm going to come and meet you where you are and be accessible, so that people, often they're just like, oh, it's just incredible that you're coming to spend some time and taking the time, and that you are willing to advocate on my behalf. When I was, when we did the sort of TRA in the Aylesbury, they were like, oh, we didn't know our MP could suddenly write on our behalf or like chase the council on our behalf. So my big thing is, I'm lucky that people think well of the Labour Party because of my predecessor. I cannot squander that legacy. And the way I build on it is to meet people where they are, root myself in the issues that they care about. So the priorities for, Peckham for me were determined by conversations that I've had, the listening campaigns that we've done. And I heard housing, and I heard cost of living and economic empowerment, particularly amongst the Black community. And I heard we don't feel safe in our community. And so everything I'm trying to do is rooted around those priorities. So root yourself in the stuff that the people that you are there to serve care about, and do it well, and do it with passion and conviction. And I'm hoping that so long as I do that, people have my back and I keep being their MP. And if I stop doing that, they are right to boot me out.
I think you have done a fantastic job, 8 months down the line, in terms of engaging your local community, in terms of being, some of the stuff you've mentioned, being very accessible, even though being very new to the job as well. But the thing that also that you mentioned about actually engaging with your local community, it's about, obviously, when we look at Camberwell and Peckham, lots of ethnic minorities. The landscape or sort of the narrative, among the young adults, I would say, I would look at maybe unemployment, maybe crime. And I think also, I wouldn't say I'm 100% certain of this, what I'm going to say, is actually getting young adults, because, engaged in some way, whether, in politics or being interested in any sense or any regard in terms of engaging within politics or public service, should I say. How do you, as an MP for that area, and based on your experience, your background, your story, and everything else that you've mentioned, how do you think you'll be able to do that? And if someone was watching this, one of your local residents or their parent or whatever, how can you engage a young adult into public service, for example?
And look, I don't think it's just young adults. I think it's young people. And I'll give you a short story if I can. So I went to one of our local schools, and which is the part of the job I love doing, not least because the kids are super candid and they tell you exactly what they think. And I remember meeting the sort of school council that had representatives of every year group, so from the age of 10 right up. And the head said, and this, I was running to be the MP. So this is going to be your MP. Tell her what you think of politics and politicians. And there was like a 3 minutes where we went round the table, and every single one of them said, "Can't be trusted. They lie. They're in it for themselves." It was like a very depressing and sobering 3 minutes.
Wow.
And I, three thoughts that went in my head is like, it's incredible that there's that level of cynicism and apathy about politics at such a young age, because then it goes up, and that's why we have a generation of young adults. I don't blame them, because I think we've seen the worst of politics for the last 15 years. And I just said to them, look, I understand why you feel the way that you do. And I'm not going to say any words, because actually words are quite cheap now. It is by doing. And I'm going to show you that I will be, the sort of MP, the sort of politicians. And I think we need more of that. I think, that there are many reasons why I'm angry about the Tories the last 15 years, because of the damage they did in the country. But they did so much damage to our politics. And we had a brand of leaders that I think were shallow and weak leaders, of which, you can list them from Boris Johnson through to Liz Truss. But they showed the worst of our politics. And I think it's the responsibility of this Labour government. We've got amazing colleagues. It's not just me. We've got an amazing top team. We've got an amazing generation of people that have come in. That it is now our job not to do the talking, but just to show them politics is about service. And I think if we can show them it is about service, and if I am rooted in my community and they can see, oh, you said you were going to do that, and you've done it. And you said you were going to engage with us and work, and you've done that. Then their views change. And I think that is a responsibility that each and every one of us now, as MPs, have. We've got to rehabilitate politics, but it's not about our words, it's about our actions.
I think that makes so much sense, and especially when you talk about your colleagues, and literally you would say anyone can say anything. It's about the doing and actually, doing those things that people can see. And so if you had to go back to that school and where you went, they could actually say, oh, my mom said this, or I can see this happening, and this is different, which really makes sense. And, this court of MPs that we've got within the Labour Party, I think half of them are new, as yourself. How does that feel to be a newbie and actually in this role, and with such phenomenal election wins that we had? How does that feel?
It feels genuinely incredible. I will always remember my first week in Parliament, and we had the whole of the new Labour PLP come together for a picture. And just our sheer numbers, but it wasn't just about our sheer numbers. It was just the kind of the richness and diversity, and the quality. And so I feel incredibly proud. I'm so proud of the team I'm part of, and it is collegiate. It's supportive, and I'm often asked, oh, is it a bit, is it backbiting? Is it this? I'm no, it's just a load of people that are desperate to do good, that are in politics because they want to serve and they want to change the country. And that is incredibly inspiring to be part of. And now we just need to turn that into action. But, there is so much energy and commitment and also responsibility. It was a mandate for change. I don't think a single one of us takes that lightly. And so there is a body of work to be done, but we've got the talent and we've got the breadth, and it's not just about the front bench, it's in our back benches as well. And if I compare it, to the last government and the quality in their ranks, we are in a very, very special position. And, I hope and I think we are using all of that. I love the fact that we've now got these mission champions. I love the fact that we've got loads of our colleagues in the back. In my portfolio, I'm leaning and drawing on many of my colleagues who have huge expertise to help us shape the policies to change the country. So, it's an impossible job that we have against the legacy, but we've got caliber and quality to deliver it. So now we have to get on and deliver.
Fantastic. So the depth is there. And I'm going to ask, so the depth is there. You've got the variety of different MPs, and I think I am, so on behalf of the 1987 committee, I think from what we've seen and being part of the Labour Party, I have to put a disclaimer there, is that we're really happy in terms of the delivery of how things are going, the direction of how things are going. I think, it's early days as yet. And
8 months, 9 months, what is it?
So people do get impatient, but I think as a rule, I think everything looks like they're in good working order, and actually we're all pointing in the right direction in terms of where we need to be as a country and as a nation. I'm going to end up with asking you 3 short, just quickly, maybe sort of 5 questions. Now, what is your favorite book?
Oh gosh. Do you know what? I got asked this quite recently, and it's Grapes of Wrath, which I haven't read recently, but of all the books in my life I've read, that's the book, Steinbeck. That's the book that sort of has always stuck with me and probably shaped my politics in many ways.
Fantastic. What's your happy place?
My kids jumping on my head. Home. Yeah, no, that is definitely, because then you're nothing other than mom. And they're piling on and like...
Oh, that is so nice. That is nice. How do you unwind? Because we talked about politics and all the fanciful and great stuff that you're doing, and we're really proud of you, I must add. How do you unwind and how do you reset?
Yeah. So I, and my husband and brother tell me that I should keep this a secret, but I love nothing more than really trashy rom-coms. And the Netflix ones that are just really badly produced and acted. I love nothing more than a horrible rom-com, or indeed a rom-com book. And so when I do like properly unwind, if I'm going on holiday and I want to shut down, the trashier the better.
Well, that's nice because that's your safe space, right? That's your safe space. That's what really makes you feel you're able to recharge and reset and decompress as well.
Yeah.
And on that note, I want to say thank you ever so much on behalf of the 1987 committee for your time to talk to us, to get to know you a bit more, even though we do, but also to put out there, sort of the amazing work that you're doing, and especially on this month that we celebrate International Women's Day. What does that mean? And also the fantastic stuff that you're doing. And we look forward to engaging more with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
No, absolute pleasure. Thank you for talking to me.
Thank you.